I will go ahead and kick us off. Hello, everybody. I am Brittany Nguyen at First Tee headquarters. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your incredibly busy schedule to learn a little bit more about the enhancements coming to our Safe Sport platform in January. So hopefully a lot of you saw the information that we shared in Impact Today last week about what some of those enhancements are. Today, I will be turning it over shortly to my colleague, Rob Neal, who's going to talk a little bit more about those updates. He'll share a brief presentation, and then we are going to open it up to you all for questions. So if you have questions throughout today's session, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Our team is on hand. We'll be answering some in the chat, and then, of course, we'll answer any remaining questions live on the call. If we don't get to your question by the end of the call at 1:30 today, then we would be happy to follow up with you after. This meeting is also being recorded, so we are more than happy to share the recording with any of you after the call today, and we'll share it with everybody who's registered as well. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Rob Neal.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you all for attending this afternoon or morning, as the case may be, wherever you are. I may know a lot of you, but just to reiterate, I am Rob Neal, Vice President, Safe Sport, Risk Management, and International. I've been around First Tee for not quite 6 years now, a little more than 5.5, so I suppose, in different roles, most recently working with the chapter relationships team, where I got to know a lot of you all out there with the chapters. Safe Sport is the first thing in my title, and it is where I spend a lot of my time in various components on incidents and reporting the policy itself. But recently, we spent a lot of time working on improving the process for all the adults going through the system and getting background checked and Safe Sport trained. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Before we get into a lot of the details, however, I would like to introduce a couple of other members of our team that are focusing on Safe Sport and particularly the background check and training procedures. And that is Holly McDaniels and Pepper Pete. I'm sure all of you have communicated with them one way or another, some good times and some more difficult times. But I would like to let them each show their faces and say hello. So we'll start with Holly.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone on the call. I'm very excited for everyone to learn more about the new system. And again, I'm always here if any questions, concerns. I don't know much right now myself, but hopefully over the next coming weeks, I'll have more to share with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Pepper Pete. I'm the one that distributes those codes right now. And for the rest of the year, naturally, if you have any concerns about how many codes that you have, please feel free to reach out to me at any time and I can let you know where you stand. Thanks.
Thank you, Pepper. So there's kind of two parts to today's conversation. One is about what's coming ahead in 2025 and our new platform and the things that will be happening there. The other is about winding down with our current platform and what needs to be done in 2024 for a smooth transition and for a good experience for you and your folks within the system. So to start, we'll talk about the new program coming up. So what is changing? The first thing, we've been using Sports Engine since the inception of this in 2020 or so. And that has been okay. It's been clumsy at times. It's been a kind of a clunky system for us. It's not designed specifically for the Safe Sport and background check process. One of the things that made it very challenging for all of us, and certainly for chapter administration and for the adults going through the system, have been the codes. And the codes have been the tool that has allowed chapters to pay for the background checks. in our new system going forward with a company called Sport 80, and it's a kind of, I would say, a more modern system that has been designed more specifically for this process than what Sports Engine has been offering. One of the great things about it is we won't have codes anymore. So that should simplify it, not just for chapters and buying codes and tracking codes and distributing them to your folks, but also to the folks going through the process, having to find the code, enter it twice, different parts of the thing, and get their way through the system. So that's been maybe the loudest piece of feedback we've been getting from chapters over the last couple of years, is just the complexity of the codes. And so thankfully those will be going. Now, there's a consequence to getting rid of the codes, and that will be a little bit of change in the flexibility that chapters have. In the past, you've been able to have some of your folks at a given chapter use codes and some of your folks not use codes. In the new world with Sport 80, in order to make a lot of the process a lot smoother, chapters will need to will choose 100% of their folks will need to be chapter pay, or 100% of your folks will need to be self-pay. And you'll need to be making that selection in the near future for 2025. So when we talked to chapters over the last year about this as a sort of a sacrifice for the simplicity and a smooth process for the adults, the feedback was, I would say, overwhelming, that it is worth that option of having some use a code and some not use a code, to get rid of codes altogether and chapter make that determination of everybody is chapter pay or everybody is self-pay. So that will be one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle. We've also been able to confirm that headquarters will continue to cover the training costs. So when we're talking about codes, it's always been about background checks only, and headquarters has always paid the fee for the training. We will continue to pay. That's been a year-to-year decision, but we will continue to pay for training costs in 2025. So we're really just talking about in terms of payment for the background checks. I will also state that the expense for the background check has been $20.50 per person since the beginning, and that will continue through at least 2025. So the price will remain the same at $20.50. That's kind of next year, and we can answer questions about next year in more detail. But the thing we want to focus on right now is that we are still living in the sports engine world. Things in 2024 are not changing in any material way. And so what do you need to do now and up to the end of this year? So first, with the 2024 checks and training, we're advising very, very strongly to communicate with your adults and to register and complete their checks and training by December 20th. The system won't be turned off on December 20th, but as we know, that push through the holiday up to January 1, a lot of things can happen. So please do everything you can to get everybody that needs 2024 renewals, or they're new to your system, and they need to get checked and trained in the 2024 calendar year. Please get that done by December 20th. That means also when you distribute a code or send a link to a person to get checked and trained, please encourage them to use it by December 20, not just you distributing it by the 20th, but please get it used so that background check is done and the training is completed in 2024. That'll make the transition of the data from one system to the other much smoother for everybody involved. For 2025, as we said a little bit earlier, the main piece to the puzzle, the main decision for chapters to make early on in this calendar year for 2025 is to select whether you want your chapter to be chapter pay or self-pay for the background checks. And please do that by December 20th. So Pepper might be able to help us with this, but for reminders for this year, again, chapters have purchase codes. Those codes are not refundable. So please check with our team, Pepper in particular, to see which codes at your chapter have not been used. One of the issues we seem to have is chapters will distribute a code to an individual for a background check in May, let's say. They don't use that code. You list it as distributed, so you've crossed it off your list, but that individual did not use the code. So you've paid for a code that's not used. If you can confirm that an individual is not going to use that code, you can reissue it to somebody else. So checking with Pepper to see which codes have not been used might help you track down who you distributed those unused codes to, so that you can reissue them if you need them for somebody else. Again, please communicate with all the adults that you're dealing with to register and complete the current checks and training by the 20th. That'll make everybody's life easier, we think. And select chapter pay and self-pay by December 20th. And there's a form for doing that. So I can't see the questions coming through very well, but we'll get to your questions now.
So Rob, you got
Yep.
it, Sandy.
I got it. Sorry, it was clicking on too many buttons at once. The first
Right.
question I did answer in the chat, but what is the cost of the background checks?
Yeah, so like I said, that'll remain $20.50 as it has been from the beginning of our process. And we'll continue to use NCSI has been our background check provider from the beginning, and they will continue to be that provider going forward. We found them to be pretty fast, pretty reliable. They continue to have a huge percentage of the Olympic sports and other sports organizations, youth sports organizations market share. They've been very responsive when we've had questions or issues. So we'll continue to use NCSI, same background check procedure, and we'll have the same committee reviewing the same sort of things when checks come back as flagged, and the cost will be the same at $20.50.
Great. And the next question is, how will the chapters pay for the background checks? Will the company send us a bill monthly?
Yes, that's an excellent question, and that is a part of what we are working through with Sport 80. I'm not going to make promises that we haven't confirmed with 100% accuracy, but one of the reasons we were going with Sport 80 is that they have a lot more flexibility on the billing process, reporting process. So we're anticipating that there will be a monthly bill to each chapter for those background checks. But to be confirmed, when we get closer to the end of the year, we'll have an ability to have tested that procedure and working through our accounting team here at headquarters and the most simple process that we can devise with the chapters.
And this wasn't asked, but I'm going to ask it anyways. For the individual pay, is the assumption that they will pay as they go through the process?
Yes.
Those are all the questions we have in the chat. Oh, will the system be ready to go on January 1st, 2025?
Another excellent question. So what we would like to do is have as much of the activity stop on December 20th as we can. It'll still be open for business through December 31st for those kind of wrapping things up at the end of the year under that Sports Engine platform. From January 1, which is when Sports Engine will be turned off on December 31. So that'll be over. So those codes will no longer be valid. There won't be any place for them to go. So December 31, Sports Engine is done. We will take a blackout period, basically, from January 1 to roughly January 15. We'll see what that turns out to be. But that's the goal right now. And that will allow us to migrate all of the data from Sports Engine into Sport 80 to test the system, to do all the things we can do to make sure that when we do open the new Sport 80 platform, that the experience is as smooth as possible for everybody involved. Now, I will say that if there are extenuating circumstances and you've got somebody that just absolutely has to be checked and trained between January 1 and January 15, please contact us through support or any of us directly, and we will figure out how to get that done. But for most folks, we're thinking that January 15 will be early enough to get done what needs to get done.
Great. Another billing question. Will the billing be after the purchase of the background checks, or would you buy in advance?
They will be after the fact. So you're just billed for what's being used. That's the plan.
Next question, is the interface less confusing for users?
Yes, again, we'll confirm. We're going through, so we have a testing platform that's just been established, and so we'll be going through that. But that is maybe goal number one, is that this is going to be a much, much smoother, simpler process for everybody. The idea is essentially, once you come into the new registration platform on Sport 80, you put in a set of data, and more of that data will transfer to NCSI for the background check. It'll be more seamless transition. So it'll feel like you're going really through one place rather than going through three, right? So you could argue that it felt like I registered for Sports Engine, and then I registered for my background check. Then I came back to Sports Engine, and then I registered for Safe Sport. Theoretically, that all will still be happening, but the experience should be much smoother, like it is all going to one place. And I'm not really leaving or having that feeling that I'm leaving and re-entering data over and over again. So hopefully it'll be much less confusing, much easier to know where you're supposed to go to next, and having a little more confidence you went to the right place.
Is there an option to have adults do the training first instead of the background check?
As I believe we have it now, it'll still be background check first, but you can do just the training. So we'll look into that. That's a good question, and we'll confirm when we have a better chance to do the testing. Yes, we will get more information on Sport 80 at the Network Summit. We want to answer all the questions today that we can. The main thing about today, though, we don't want to get too confused and have you all living in the two worlds at the same time. So let's focus on getting those codes used, getting the people in the Sports Engine world in 2024, get them through the system if they need to get through it in 2024. As we get closer to 2025, including at the Network Summit, we'll have more information to share, more visuals, more of an ability to answer questions and kind of show you what a preview about 2025 would look like. But again, we want to make sure the 2024 experience doesn't get muddied by living in 2025 quite yet. Yes, the background check shall be valid for 2 years. We'll continue that, and Safe Sport will continue to be an annual requirement. So that part of the policy remains the same. Background check every 2 years, Safe Sport training on an annual basis. And I'll make a note, Safe Sport is working to reduce the length of the initial training, the core training, which they call Safe Sport Trained, is roughly, it's kind of rated, I'll put it that way, at 90 minutes. Some people are taking 2 hours to take that training. They are looking to reduce that so that it takes no more than an hour. They had tried to get it down to 45 minutes. I'm not as optimistic that they'll get it that short, but it should be a much more efficient initial training. And then remember, the refreshers are all, 20 minutes to 35 minutes, I think, so much shorter for the refreshers. So that we anticipate that new Safe Sport training will probably be toward the middle of the year in 2025. It'll be available. It'll be the same training up until then. Is it easier for people to get back in the platform if they do the background check first and come back later to do the training? Again, I don't want to make promises we can't keep, but that was one of the most important pieces of the conversation with Sport 80, is that access in and out should be a whole lot easier, and to find your place in the environment, whatever it is you're trying to get done. If you want to do a background check again early to get onto a certain pace, or if you want to come back later to do the training, it should be a lot more transparent and easy to navigate once you're in the Sport 80 system.
Quick comment here, Rob. So this is Dan Brady at HQ. Just want to make sure that I call this out for the group. We talked about that there is going to be kind of a blackout period for the first approximately 2 weeks of January. I do recommend that you take a look at your rosters and identify who might be expiring during those 2 weeks, and have them processed through by that December 20th deadline. You do have, I believe, 180 days that someone can complete their training and check in advance to their existing certification. So again, I would take a look at who you have on your roster that falls within that timeline, and just to be safe, make sure that if they have to get their training and checks done, if you're planning to maintain that relationship with them, then have them go through the process a little bit early.
Thank you, Dan. That's very good advice. Yeah, and I just saw Tara pop up for an example for Sport 80. Dan, can you think off the top of your head of another organization using it? And I'll say that with a caveat, Tara, that because you won't be registering for that other organization, it's hard to really see what the experience is. So all you would really get to is maybe the front page, and you wouldn't really get inside the platform. So I'm not sure that that's going to be all that useful, because the organization will have more control over that kind of landing page, and it will be less about the Sport 80 experience until you get the link and you actually get in there. So I'm not sure that's going to be helpful at this point. I think when we get to the network summit, I'm hopeful that we'll at least have some visuals to show you on what those pages would look like. I don't know that we'll be able to fully replicate the experience at that point, but I think we should at least be able to give you an example of, this is the first page within the Sport 80 environment. Here are the buttons you're going to be clicking. Here's the type of information you're going to need to input. Those sorts of things by that point in November. Additionally, we'll have an array of training videos, resources on the intranet, webinar opportunities, whatever it is that we feel we need to offer you guys or what you guys are requesting. We'll do everything we can to make it as smooth, as comfortable, and reduce the surprise for everybody as much as possible as we get toward the end of the year.
Any other questions? Okay. As Rob mentioned, we are definitely prepared to host any additional open Q&As, webinars, anything. We're really excited about these updates. I think they're long awaited, and I know Rob and team have been working extremely hard to make sure we found the right platform and that it was going to accomplish what it is that our network was asking for. So Really appreciate again everyone's time here. We will follow up with the recording and then again the link to select either chapter pay or self-pay. And then just that final reminder too, to please encourage your adults to both register and complete their background check and training by December 20th, just to try to avoid any issues over the holiday period as we inch closer to the end of the year. If
So
you guys,
Paul,
yeah, go
Paul
ahead.
threw out a question that
Oh.
I'll answer. It was a good question. So thank you, Paul. Yes, there was some talk about a training specifically designed for board members that might be shorter than training for other folks. We pursued that vigorously, might be an understatement. We looked at many options on ways to do that, and including creating our own private training for that. We've talked with the U.S. Center for Safe Sport about that. We talked to third-party providers about that. And the deeper we looked and the more questions we asked, the more difficult it was to find a solution that would actually be a better experience for those board members. One of the issues is they would end up going kind of a different track, which might add complexity to their experience. There would be things about compliance and tracking data. Is it good enough? Does it meet the standards we're expecting? Those sorts of things, to the point where it was just, it's not really feasible. However, we continue to lobby the Center for Safe Sport for board-specific training. We're not the only organization asking for that. And ultimately, that is the best source for that board-specific training will be the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. It's not going to be on their 2025 agenda, but we will continue chipping away, trying to find a way to do that. So what also tempered our effort to find board-specific training was the news that Safe Sport was reducing the basic Safe Sport trained, the core training for everybody, so that the gap between what we would have produced for board members specifically in terms of time would have been smaller or will be smaller once Safe Sport reduces the time it takes for all people to go through the initial training. So kind of the benefit side of that was getting squeezed because they were already reducing the training for everybody. So I hope that makes sense. We'll continue to do that. And there were two parts to the board experience. I know this is a huge issue for everybody. One was the complexity of the platform with Sports Engine and codes and finding your place, and once you're in the training, coming back to your spot and all that kind of stuff. So the intent is that Sport 80 will smooth that process for everybody, including board members, so that it's a little less cumbersome and confusing for those folks who are serving on your boards. And then the second part was the length of time it takes to get trained. So hopefully we'll improve that experience on the technology side. And by the middle of the year or so, Safe Sport will provide a shorter training. So those board members' experience will at least be better in 2025 is the plan, significantly, than it has been in 2024.
All right. Final call.
All right. And I'll say this, thank you to everybody who's been paying attention to Safe Sport and getting people checked and trained. The improvement across the network has been nothing short of phenomenal in 2024, in the past 12 months or so. We've got a lot of people on the team at headquarters trying to help support you. So I'm sure you've encountered lots of folks, but when you get down to it, it's the work of you guys at the chapters, encouraging people to get through the thing and help holding their hands and promoting it, because it is the number one risk. We see this over and over. We study and we conclude the number one risk to all the chapters and to headquarters and the whole enterprise is any youth safety misconduct, breach of, a real sexual misconduct will impact the entire network if it happens in one significant way at one chapter. Allegations are even important. And so I know it's a pain. It's a pain for all of us, but it is very important. It protects your chapter, it protects your kids, it protects your adults. and it protects the entire network. So I can't emphasize enough how much we appreciate progress we've made. There's more progress we need to make going forward, but hopefully these new tools will make it easier for everybody. So I appreciate everybody's work on it.
All right, if you guys have any other questions, I'm sure you have Rob on speed dial, but if not, you can email support@firsttee.org. Like I said, we'll follow up with the recording and some of the links we shared today, but thank you all again. And we hopefully look forward to seeing all of you in Phoenix next month.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.